All right then. Welcome back to the Foxhole. AfterShoX 032, the season finale of Season 1. That's right, folks. Your faithful host, Kit Harlan, is here from Eagle's Nest 2, Studio B, on a terrific Tuesday, to give you another round of our favorite takes and other interesting things to say, always engaging. Anyhow, season finale AfterShoX 032 coming right at you. All right, folks, it's been a heck of a ride to get to this point. Always encouraging you to like and subscribe to FTINFX Media's YouTube channel. Help out the algorithm there. Give a brother some help. Also, my buddy SJ and the SJ Gets Down podcast. Give her some love as well. Want to be on the podcast? Sponsor it? Or just say hey. FTINFX@gmail.com or 541-525-0896. Leave a message. We'd love to hear from you. All right, let's get racking it with episode 32, the season finale. Well, I was listening to some high-def files the other day, or high-res, actually. Listening to Sgt. Pepper's. Had been a while. I was thinking about, now we know how many holes it takes to fill the Albert Hall, but I think it's Sunday, or was it Saturday? It was Sunday. How many holes does it take to fill the Boston Garden or the Old Forum? Because what I was seeing the other night with the Lakers and Celtics renewing their historic rivalry, there's not much of a rivalry at all. Now, I know the Lakers have their issues, being a fan and all that of that team, but still, when it's Lakers and Celtics, you expect this rivalry, especially when both teams are bound to make the playoffs, which means even if both squads may have flaws, anything can happen in this thing. And I love James Worthy calling out the Lakers and their effort. As somebody who takes this rivalry seriously, yeah, I was really appalled. You're sitting there making Peyton Pritchard look like the second coming of Bob Cousy, wrapped up into Danny Ainge and John Havlicek. It's a problem. And I think Laker Nation, as I've spoken on all the platforms, yeah, they're at their wits' end. And I think this is just another low in terms of this treadmill to mediocrity they're going to be on until the Walter Group fix this franchise. Simple as that. But I got to give it up to Big Game James for just calling it like it is and being pissed off. Glad somebody is. We know Jeannie's too busy counting her money. And Palinka, what is he, like out there trading Pokemon cards or something like that? Let me move away from that because it's just pretty disappointing. This is a rivalry, not because I'm a fan, as a rivalry in what we would like to see at this point in the year, especially with the second meeting. Now, move on. The tanking discussion. It's been taking weirder and weirder turns. But I'm hearing everything from Rachel Nichols. Oh, yeah. That Rachel Nichols up here saying, well, if you don't get a certain percentage over 5 years, you have to sell the team. Like somebody's going to sign on to buy a team in the millions, now billions, to have it taken away from them in 4 or 5 years. Now, granted, she did say, well, this is in a perfect world, but I think a pie should be shoved in your face for even suggesting that. Barkley had some interesting suggestions as far as what we can do about it. We obviously know the commissioner came out with his remedies, and some of it is so far flung, as I was saying the other day. I think it was episode 3 or 2 of Fox Dragon and a Foxhole. Yeah, at some point, just be an adult and realize that certain folks are going to have that Connie Mack principle when it comes to this being a business. And I think worry less about tanking and fix your load management problem. That's the bigger thing. I mean, I think it's pretty clear when the year turns and you ain't got it. Yeah, you're in the race to get the best pick or one of the top picks. And, whatever. Somebody you can't have a protected pick, this and that. It's like, fine, whatever. I mean, all of those things, you're still not going to, as long as there is some kind of incentive in the bottom to get someone like Wimby, people are going to try to do it. If it's not basketball, football, trying to get the quarterback. I mean, I've talked for years about the fan bases who have coronaries the last 2 weeks of the season in the NFL. What are you doing? What are you doing? We could have got Arch Manning. I mean, I just think it's kind of ingrained within the fabric and the framework of these sports. Not everything has to have a pretty solution or a happy ending. But in the case if you get a Wimby, it's a very happy. The integrity, hell, Commissioner Silver, the integrity went out the building a long time ago when it comes to that damn league. Is it fair to say? Another interesting thing that's kind of come up this week. All this conversation, and this is kind of piggyback on what I was saying last week, with the way the All-Star game was structured. But it just doesn't go away. The NBA is really lacking a face with LeBron and KD and Curry getting really long in the tooth, and we need to move away from them. I mean, why does the league need to have a face? Can't it just be a league of ballers? I mean, yeah, there's at times where NFL is focused on the quarterbacks, but even then, NFL kind of puts the product before the stars, where it's like the NBA, we just need to have this face. I mean, after, Bird and Magic shared it. Obviously, Jordan, redefined it. We've had LeBron, moments at Curry, and on and on. But I just think maybe moving forward, just focus on the product. Like I said a second ago, this load management bullshit. The tanking problem for that matter. Maybe get back to the fundamentals and stop jacking up threes where people are getting all these wonky injuries or so-called injuries. I don't know. Let me move on here quick. A lot to talk about here this week, and I like that. This is why it is a season finale. Looking forward to doing some more dastardly things in season 2. So more on that later. Yeah, this is an interesting thing that Mike Wilbon brought up several times in the past week. I think he was talking to Le Batard, and I can't remember the other instance. But the new TV deal, which is, as we've talked about, spread across all sorts of platforms, streaming this, Peacock, Prime, on and on and on. And maybe it's just the boomers and Gen Xers who are tech savvy enough, you would think. You've been in the internet age long enough. You all had a Facebook account, so how come you can't find the damn games? I can. He was bitching and moaning about it, and I was just sitting there thinking, well, gee, Mike, you work at ESPN. Maybe if you weren't so damn lazy, you could go to your damn phone and look at ESPN. What games are on tonight? Excuse me. I'm thinking of my words. What games are on tonight? And it'll say Pacers, Thunder, NBA TV, Peacock, ESPN. So as I get going on TV and bitching and moaning about things like that, but then I sit there and go, with a little bit of thinking, you can find where the games are on TV. Yes, they're spread out. I think there's certain nights we should be getting more, but it's not that hard to find, Sherlock. But you know what? He does make a point, though, when it comes to, it is getting harder and harder to ingest Well, on many nights, it's an unwatchable product. Like I was pointing out with that Celtics-Laker game, which used to be the marquee matchup of the league, and I'm just sitting there like, what is this dog shit? And that's, let's not even talk about teams that are on the tanking bus. I mean, because right after that, they have the Rockets and the Jazz have made it pretty clear. We ain't interested in winning right now. We won't get in that Darren Peterson or Boozer sweepstakes. Yeah. Okay, stop here for a second because we might want to go over here, which is a great segue to my final point here. Now that we know how many holes it takes to fill the Boston Garden, let's go to college here. Hoops. Having an incredible run. I'm not going to say renaissance because this always happens, once we start creeping into March and things really start to matter. But this Biadico or Benedico, who we've been talking about now here for quite a minute, and the others, reaching out to the Alabama Supreme Court. It's like, come on, man, let me play. Let me keep getting some of that back. So I know you don't love the Crimson Tide that much. I'm trying to figure out why the need, especially since you've been told no, it ain't happening right now, and maybe never. Well, let's see here if I can't resume this, if I can't find some sympathy in the Alabama Supreme Court. And who knows what kind of wackos are over there and what their ties to the University of Alabama might be. What have I keep saying? The NCAA is going to have to go to fight this to the nail to the Supreme Court. Come up with some statutes as far as governing this. I like the Coach JBs and Steve Kim and Whitlock and others who say, hey, 18 to 23, you have a 5-year window. There's room for a red shirt. Get your 5 years. And if that ain't happening, let somebody else get the damn bag. It's not unreasonable. Okay, lastly, so this is like 5A and 5B. Oh, this Darren Peterson. What a fascinating character. I'm going to watch the game last night. They got the big win. What was that? They were playing Houston. Big Monday night matchup. Yeah, subpar game, I guess. But it's just so interesting how we're just putting the microscope to this kid who may be playing hurt or maybe, what we think of the modern basketball players. But at any level, when it comes to protecting their bag and not bringing it, especially when it's kind of like, I know I'm going to get the bag. As Flo J's mom says, he already winning it life. But yeah, I don't know. I saw a great conversation on, I think it was Fearless today. And they were asking, with all the kind of red flags, especially since the kid said he's kind of aloof and, kind of a loner. Do you take this guy, number one, and make him the face of your franchise? Man, guy's got skills. I was like watching, kind of like a highlight reel, and, that guy's bona fide, but gee whiz. Yep, makes you wonder why more people have decided they'd rather be on the golf course than dealing with this bullshit as far as the new normal and today's modern athlete. Okay, folks, we're up and running. We'll come back with some more AfterShoX momentarily. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. Your faithful host, Kid Harlan here. AfterShoX 032, the season finale 032. Yeah, we're just cracking ourselves up here. We can barely talk. Okay, we're going to call this AfterShoX segment Glory for Gold. A feel-good moment for all? Probably not. Or the return of the MLS. Another great entrance, but where are we going from here? Well, that's kind of long-winded, so we got some things to say. Okay. So unless you've been under a rock over the last, I don't know, 96 hours or so, you know that the United States men and women won the gold medal in hockey. And what should have been a feel-good moment for all turns out to be another sad commentary of how stupid we've become and how we let the discourse run wild. Because, I was thinking, in this 96-hour window, at one point, this Olympics had kind of brought back the magic that we used to think we were experiencing when we were kids, especially when it comes to the Winter Olympics. Hi, Dorothy Hamill. How are you? Hey, Eric Hayden and Bonnie Blair and so on. And, it was great. The ladies did their thing, and the men, obviously, especially because, Canada is definitely considered to be the premier country in the world when it comes to hockey. Obviously the Swedes are pretty tough. Now that whatever was the Soviet Union ain't what it used to be. So it's just interesting how this should have been a feel-good moment, and all the other cool stuff, Michaela and all that one gal. Oh, God, I don't know what sport she does, but everybody was so happy for her. She's from the Bay Area, and I think she was originally from Fresno or something like that. Can't think of her name, because I didn't watch that much of the Winter Olympics. I'm not going to lie. I've been over that for a long time. In fact, we were out partying, on Saturday night, and it got to be like 5 in the morning. I said, well, are you staying up for this? No, I'm going to bed. So anyways, I'm rambling. Problem is, when it comes to the usual shit, oh, well, we're going to invite you all to the State of the Union. The ladies, because of the, say, commitments, politely declined. And unlike how someone like the Rapino and those, how shall we say, militant activists would have handled it, I thought it was done as best as it could. I thought it was silly. Take the invite and put the politics out. If you're going to go represent America, go deal with this, plug your nose, because that's what the men did. But this led to another discourse about, well, the women won more medals, and then somebody go, gee, how much longer, because of Title IX, have the United States been pumping money into women's sports? Don't try to make the comparison with men and women. That's absolutely retarded. Katie Couric saying something. That bubblehead making the comment, well, we're going to talk about this. I'm like, yeah, let's talk about the United States women's team, which is superstar badasses getting ran by the under 15 FC Dallas team. The women's basketball team getting run by high school teams. Stop it. It's just when people resort to this kind of nonsense, it takes the back. It totally arrests the process. We won't use the R word because people might get mad about that. But it's like, come on, man. We're so much smarter than that. I think that's what irritates me about all of this. And give the men their flowers. A lot of heroes. Jack Hughes having a Ronnie Lott kind of moment, which will forever be iconic. And tough guys all over feeling their John Wayne, Clint Eastwood. Like, yeah, man, let's go fuck somebody up kind of stuff. All that's great, and honoring, the Gay Drew brothers, all poignant moments. And somehow we get into this weird woke DEI conversation and people sitting there going, well, especially the feminists and activists, can you just STFU and have a moment? You can get back to hating America, but that's what the Olympics have always kind of been about. And I'm not being naive here because people have made political statements forever. I mean, obviously, right, Hitler in 1936 was trying to make a incredible, statement about National Socialism. So, yeah. I ain't looking at it like that. But it's so unnecessary in a time where we're easily so triggered and everything is so freaking divisive. Come on, man. Let on, you know. But I'm glad the men are showing up, talking about they love America. I saw some interesting conversations yesterday. I mean, Coach JB just going off. I ain't going there, you know, as far as what he had to say, but it does make you wonder about some of the athletes who represent our country and their need to go on these rants as opposed to, and I've said it a million times, if you're going to represent this country, take all the subsidies that help you lead to your goal, and hold off on your bullshit, okay? Because if we're pulling, we need to be united when it comes to representing this country. Because if this country revolts you, then don't be a hypocrite, okay? Don't be a hypocrite. And a lot of you clowns getting up on the pulpit with the woke ass sports media trying to bait you into nonsense. Yeah. Okay, that's like way more than I need to say when it comes to that kind of nonsense. But it's just irritating. And it's fatigue, frustration. Those are the F words I have as far as that goes. Shh. Trying to keep it real and raw up in this bitch. See, lost my track, got all cranky. All right, let me flip over here. I'm glad the Olympics are over, especially the winter ones. MLS returns. Oh my God. Another great opening day. Messy and sunny and Boanga going at it at night at the Coliseum. Thanks, Fox, for not having the game. Yet you have Atlanta and Cincinnati or something like that early in the daytime. What is wrong with you, Commissioner Garber? And there's like 75K for Inter Miami and LAFC. Great scenes with my black and gold taking the belt to the ass of the defending champs. That was, fantastic stuff there. Key takeaway here is there was 388,000 people that attended MLS matches. And my question always comes back to, why can't MLS never sustain this kind of momentum? Every year it seems like we're flowering. What an incredible opening weekend and everybody's pumped because they haven't had MLS. Then it quietly kind of dies on the vine, right? In the first month or so of the season, just goes back to trotting along, with its cultists, myself being part of that cult. But I was just sitting there, watching Commissioner Garber at the halftime of the Inter Miami LAFC game at the Coliseum, and he's all talking about, new stadiums online, and he's just sitting there beaming, and I don't blame him. It was cool scenes out there. But I'm just sitting there like going, bro, like I was thinking about, the NBA and it's taking a lot of stuff. You just got to fix your product. And yes, making it, anybody that has Apple TV can watch the games now, that's great. But when you have a game like LAFC and Miami with 75K, that should be on Fox and have maximum eyeballs in a window where you can attract fans. I mean, shit. It ain't rocket science, man. And I just get another thing. I get frustrated and have fatigue over. Because every year we hear this, oh yeah, the stadiums were packed and the atmosphere was this and that. And it's just like, okay, but where do you go from here? If you still, and I'm going to, be fair, because I know they are going to show 34 games on Fox. A lot of that isn't in conjunction with the World Cup. And I think Commissioner Garber did mention the whole thing about, this is a prelude to getting on a European calendar next year and changing things up in that regard and trying to lift the league's profile. So, I mean, I don't want to be all negative here. I'm just more of, okay, we're at this moment again, and you've heard me say for weeks now, months, about how pivotal this season is. And I just get the sense that we're going through the same dance when it comes to MLS once again. I hope I'm wrong. Time will tell, won't it? Okay, lastly, yeah, I've been talking about this for a minute. Once I got all the facts with this one, it's a Prestiani guy, Benfica, and the whole thing with Vinny. And man, this guy's pretty pathetic, man. I'm just gonna say, the way he's trying to make himself the victim and kind of shine away from it. And I think I said this on Foxtrot in a Foxhole about soccer just really needing to grow up. And just really, wondering, soccer in general. I'm always talking, about how bad our fans can be. How many, TMCA awards have I given out for folks, and their behavior? But the one thing you don't really see, and when you do see it, it's the beautiful game life, the Puto chant and, other stuff. In a country that's got enough angry people that are racist or whatever you want to call it, depending on who's dishing it out, you don't really hear too often of somebody wanting the game stopped because somebody's drawing an N bomb or an S bomb or a K bomb. Or any of those juicy things you can say to get people wanting to whoop your ass. You don't see it that often. And that's pretty interesting given how hot-headed us Americans can be. That's why I'm just looking at the soccer world and just saying, man, grow the fuck up. Enough of this bullshit already. When I see these matches that get stopped, I was talking about this last week where you're just like 12, 13 minutes, they're still trying to figure out. Man, I don't blame these guys like Vinny and stuff who, basically get, a seizure from having this crap rained on them, the theatrics that have to go along with that. I'm okay. I'm fine with that. The fact that, somebody hasn't gone all Jim Brown, the Dirty Dozen on somebody. Yeah, I know that's a pretty dated reference, but hey, I heard it earlier, so I can't help using it. Oh my goodness, man. But yeah, I just, without getting too carried away here, good grief, for hats off to the side, all cockeyed. I wonder I wonder how long it took for me to notice that. Anyways, yeah, the beautiful game just really needs to freaking grow up, All right, folks. We're cooking. We'll be back shortly, hopefully with a straight hat. All right, welcome back to the Foxhole. AfterShoX 032, Season 1, Episode 32, the season finale. With your faithful host, Ken Harlan here. Ice cold chilling on a terrific Tuesday from Eagles Nest to Studio B. I forgot to close my points up with something I was going to say. So let me get that off my chest here. I was thinking about what should have been a feel-good moment with these Olympics, but it ended up with too many people trying to have their John Carlos, Tommy Smith, moment and with the woke press. And it just didn't quite happen. In fact, a lot of these people look kind of foolish. I don't want to agree with the Whitlocks and Coach JBs and those guys. And Megyn Kelly, who's just sitting there like, right? But I think a lot of these people made fools of themselves, and the folks that showed love for our country came out looking good. Not to, let the guys in Outkick and Fox News run around like hyenas either. all that shit won't right either. This is like, you didn't give a shit. You just wanted reason to sit there and poke at the mad libs, as you say. Ugh. See, this is why I'm an independent, because I ain't got time for this nonsense with either side. Y'all be what you be. That's all I got. All right. What are we gonna call here? We're gonna call this. It might be late February, but football is still on the brain. Yeah. Got a lot to talk about here. I'm always coming at the commish, Mr. Roger Goodell, right? His wife, who used to be on Fox News, Jane Skinner with Skinnerville. Yeah, Roger. This kid, Rondell Moore, I believe it is, was last with the Vikings. And I remember he had missed 2024. I remember watching the preseason game on the NFL Network, and he was like, first action back in a year. He's trying to run a kickback, and he got hurt again. And, out for another season. I didn't think much of it. And I found out this guy committed suicide. Did a little bit dive. And I was sitting there thinking, wow, and you heard the kid speak and all the people that, spoke good things about him. You're just like, what the hell? And it's like, Commissioner, you got a problem with this mental health thing that needs to be addressed. And I wasn't too keen on people like Coach JB and others, kind of calling the kid soft, for not being able to cope with whatever he was going through and not reaching for the CTE, any of that kind of stuff, because we don't really fucking know. But what I do know is it's happening enough to where you really need to, take a time out and really address this mental health problem. No way, that kid. I mean, I could see if you were some hood rat and all kinds of other wild stuff, but, just watching that kid talk and other things, I'm like, nah, man, this is where, Commissioner, and that's not to say if a hood rat has mental issues, that should be ignored. No, I ain't getting to that point. I'm just more or less like going, or you can't judge a book from its cover, which means you need to take more, I don't know, you need to invest more into finding out why these guys are having, these mental health issues, and which leads to whatever anxiety, which leads to offing yourself when you're in your 20s, making a good bag and having your whole life in front of you to live. Yeah, I just think, Commissioner Roger, you have a problem. And maybe the numbers are like, oh, you're overreacting. I'm like, no, I think over the last 10 years, the things that we're seeing, and this is just not even in football, but all sports. There's a whole conversation to be had about that in terms of these kids all of a sudden becoming very privileged, getting bags of cash and not being able to handle it and all the pressures. All these things are probably true. But it still means it has to be addressed. Because you just don't need to be seeing this kind of stuff, man. The kid was like 25. Okay. Let's go to a more interesting topic. How about this one? A lot of proposals flying out because, the league year is starting and the combine's going on. So everybody's getting together again after being away, rubbing elbows and trying to get to the watering holes. Those people that actually show up and aren't so fucking lazy and are doing it on Zoom, like people like the Rams. Ooh, pishpa. Oh, man, let me don't lose my place here. But one thing that's on the table is having replay officials, giving them the ability to throw flags from above. And I thought, man, is this a good idea? Or is this a really bad idea? And quite frankly, I don't know. And I've given it serious thought. On the surface, I think it's a fantastic idea. There's so much bullshit that gets missed, blatant things, And to be able to have somebody correct that's great. But why do I think, like VAR and it's broken, adding another element only adds more layers of bullshit, more layers of uncertainty because these mofos are too afraid to actually make a decision. You know, the adults being in the room, but the adults being in the replay booth and on the field, the officials. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know, homie. I don't know if this is a good idea. Then there's the whole thing of like, because the UFL is going to make field goals beyond 60 worth 4 points. There are people that want to get rid of the onside kick and make it a 4th and 20 play. And I'm just like, no, because there'll be somebody up there like fucking Brady who will always be able to pull that off. No. Let's stop with the gimmicks here, people. Stop with the gimmicks. And in this discussion of all these proposed rule changes, one conversation that's been at the forefront for the last 3 or 4 years isn't this year. Gee, I wonder why. What is Ken talking about? Ken is talking about that tush push. And guess what? When the Eagles crash and burn like they did this year, and it wasn't as formidable in the past, you're kind of like, yeah, right. So far, no team has proposed to abolish it, which means it's probably here to stay, at least till the Eagles get good again. The other question I had in this weird week, why are players so against being tagged? Having the franchise tag applied to them? How dare you give me $31 million? How dare you keep me from getting my money? And I'm almost thinking, okay, yeah, you're locked up and it doesn't give you the flexibility you like, but you're still making market value. And if you're still producing, even in your butt hurt, you will get another contract. And if you don't, and you're not an idiot, you still got a pretty good bag for the time you were tagged. Yeah, it's probably inconvenience, as I said a second ago, as far as limiting your flexibility. But when I look at what those tags usually are from a numbers perspective, yeah, like I said, if you're not being an idiot, that's pretty nice bag. Big old bag. As Flo James' mom says, y'all wouldn't oh, man. You know, I've been meaning to bring this one up for a couple of weeks. I keep forgetting because there's so many things. God, you're going to love the race hustlers and baiters, the shit they come up with. And, you know, and everybody's obsession with the Epstein files. Because nobody's ever going to let go of that. Fine. I can't convince you to fixate on something else. But I love how the race hustlers and baiters got their turn with us. Basically like saying, man, remember how they came after Mike Vick? You all came after him. You know, like he was Pontius Pilate and the people that betrayed Jesus. Hell, you let these Epstein people cruise. And I just like, wow. People are equating the treatment of Mike Vick. But what? The race hustlers and baiters, and this is even Stephen Smith at the time, was like, come on, people. It's a dog we're talking about. These were dogs. I'm like, yeah, and with a lot of folks, when it comes to their pets, they value their pets above humans. And I just thought, man, this is such a twisted world that we live in, right? When this is even, you know, that people are having conversations about this and being pissed off because we aren't going after some of these Epstein perps that have been revealed in the flyers as hard as we came after Mike Vick for what he did to all those dogs, him and his peeps. Yeah. Okay, lastly, give you like a little of my cinematic takes. I'm slowly getting through a lot of these documentaries that are on the streaming platforms. I finally got around to watching Elway last week. I need to watch The Miracle of Ice. I was going to do it before this episode, but I know I'm going to have more to say about the Olympics for episode 303, so I'll save that there. Wow. Ramble. Yeah, I found Elway to be interesting, for a couple of reasons. One, remembering the whole thing he went through and how good he was at Stanford and 2-star athlete, blah, blah, blah. His dad coached at CSUN. And hey, by the way, my Mariners are tied for first place, yo. Coach N's career won 8 in a row. But back to Elway. His dad coached at Northridge. This is like the year before I got there, obviously, which is even crazier. Or no, several years back now thinking about it, but part of the scenery. Let's not get lost here. And, his early years, the struggles he went through. Not to mention, basically bucking the system, telling Frank Kush, basically, I ain't playing for you. And nobody didn't talk about how the Raiders had a deal for him. And Al Davis said, not Al Davis, but Pete Rozelle said, no, Al, you ain't rolling like that. And the issues he had, I thought it was quite fascinating watching this, right? And remembering, the first 3 Super Bowls, and, 2 of them, they got their ass kicked pretty badly, especially by the 49ers, and even when the Redskins beat them. I was thinking, great redemption story, and how I feel like that era is so much better than the slop we're seeing in the 21st century. Now, I know there's a part of me that's probably a prisoner of the moment as far as that goes. And people can always come back, pre-free agency, which was the first part of his era. And then, obviously, when he won, is when, ushered kind of the era that we're in now. I get that argument in terms of it's easier to keep a team together for a little bit longer. You didn't have, the flexibility or the movement that's made it harder and makes the teams that, like the Chiefs and the Patriots, you're going to appreciate their efforts more. But I'll take the toughness of that era any day. Because I look at these teams and go, well, it's still the same damn game. And I just don't know if, with the way the rules were then, and seeing some of the hits, like, going back to, like, the drive, right, over there, or the mistake at the lake, and watching those games, it's just, I can see why the boomers and Gen Xers, well, back in my day, this is how football was played. It was something, artful, and you can romanticize about it a little bit. Yeah, when you start getting into, I didn't know he had a twin sister who died. Somehow that eluded me, and I tend to know these things, and the whole thing with his wife Janet and all this other kind of stuff. I know you're going to humanize these things, but I'm just here for the data. But, I give it a thumbs up. I was glad that I kind of watched it. If all these docs have been coming out, that I'm kind of careful of what I watch, because there's stuff I know is going to be too cheesy. But I've been surprised by, the 49ers one. I like the one about the Cowboys. The Dynasty, I thought, was a little too, I don't know, too predictive towards Bill. And I am no fan of Bill's as far as being a defender goes. But I do acknowledge his greatness. And I thought this was okay. It was definitely a good watch. Brought back some memories, between that and the 49ers. Just being able to revisit that, era. It's been pretty cool. All right. Let's not ramble too long with these thoughts. I'm always going to comment if I watch one of these documentaries. What's your thought? If you've seen any of these, tell me, drop me a line. FTINFX@gmail.com, or leave a message. 541-525-0896. Love to hear from you. Okay. When we return, some parting shots and possible salty takes. See you momentarily. Alrighty, welcome back to the Foxhole. AfterShoX 032. The season finale. We're cracking ourselves up here. It was a joke in between segments. Let me get it together here. Okay, so we've come to this point where it's parting shots and possible salty takes. What do we start off with? Okay, Money and Pacquiao 2. Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao are going to fight again. Knew it was coming. Netflix, obviously, awash in cash, right? Big merger that they're all fighting with, with Warner's and Paramount. Clearly plenty of cash, and there's too much to unpack here. First of all, money. Being the mercurial cat that he is, I've said this millions of times. Guy must have made, like $1 billion or more in earnings. And like I said years ago, we know Uncle Sugar got his cut. But how is it that you have to come out of retirement so you can get a bag to cover all this nonsense, all your reckless spending? And I know he's got the big lawsuit with, is it Showtime? Where he claims they stole $380 million. Yeah, okay. But, with the sweet science, and if you follow my platforms, that I've been speaking about its demise for a long time. I always text back and forth with my good buddy, Cooley Walker, the fight doctor, and yeah. The absurdity of this, and you think that people are talking about this today, like, well, this could be interesting, and Floyd's an offensive fighter, and this could. It was a square dance, as Chris Broussard said the last time they fought. So what the hell's it going to be now? Let's put our walkers together and do the robot walk? Man, oh man, oh man. Okay. Yeah. Like I said, are you, if you're that broke, are you like the $1 billion fool? Wow. Yeah, I could sit here for the next hour on that, but we got to move on. Speaking of blowing through money, a lot of that going around. This must be a recurring theme as far as parting shots are concerned and salty takes. Live. Burning through $100 million a month, they say. Got to pay those bags and prizes and travel and accommodations, I suppose. And of course, PDF is just infusing all kinds of cash back into it. A product that's really not moving the needle, other than Anthony Kim, which we were like, woo, yeah, what a great story. But otherwise, we're just like, nobody's looking forward to any live events. And yeah, John Rahm, you can't do this with DP, blah, blah. Nobody cares. But hey, let's just keep throwing money at it. Come on, y'all, throw the Foxhole some money, man. Get some cool gear and travel, and we'll go support this stuff. Since there's so much money to be thrown around, jeez. Yeah, 100 million just like makes you think of like Deepwater Horizon, all that oil coming out of the pipe until they got it capped after 9 days or whatever it was. This is just like money coming out of the pipe. It's like, making it rain all the time. Woo, man. Okay. Where do we go next? I gotta come back to this, man. Flo J. Johnson's mom. Yeah, that Flo J. Johnson. This is quite the family. And I talked about this at not AfterShoX, but Fox Drinking a Foxhole 302. And whenever I see this clip in the way it's been broke down by many people, I gotta ask myself, what are we creating? Or has this always been there? And now with social media and the ability to live stream, that parents can just act a fool like this? And this whole thing, oh, we ain't losing at life. Well, there's several ways you can unpack that. And I love that many people were coming at her, not only for disrespecting Don Staley in South Carolina, and just how ridiculous it just is that some of the things that she was saying. They used to cringe when Vibe Bomb would, try to brag about us to her friends or something like that. And I'm glad that she never got to know how to use social media. Be like, oh, this is what Ken's doing. And just to see this and talk about the bag and get into it with other people's moms like she's done in the past. This is, Flo J's mom and stuff. And the brother wanting to, throw down with some girls because she thought somebody was disrespecting her. I mean, the moral of it is, and everybody brought this up yesterday, don't you realize these shenanigans end up costing your people dollars? Don't you all fucking get it? Look what happened with teams that didn't want to deal with Shador. He slipped to the 5th round. His mama talking about she gonna be a lottery pick. Well, maybe if teams want to deal with her and you and the family, but that would require common sense to creep in. And that seems to be in short supply on that expressway. And, I've coached and been around wacko parents and stuff like this and seen, from afar, all sorts of things. But some of the shit that we're seeing right now, man. Okay. What else do we have as far as parting shots go? Man. So this is the World Cup coming up here sooner than we think. And shit, Mexico is on fire because El Mencho, and I want to know who collected $15 million bounty that was on his head, got clipped by special forces. And all hell's breaking loose, and all the Liga MX matches, I think there were 4 that were canceled because, Chivas is down there. And that's one of the sites for the World Cup, as I was pointing out. Yeah, I don't think there's going to be World Cup matches in Mexico. I'm really thinking that's a distinct possibility right now. Because you think the unrest from El Mencho getting clipped the way that he did is going to subside anytime soon? And who knows what these fucking cartels may think of as far as retaliation and revenge goes. I take a page out of the Escobar book. Wild times we're living in, man, as always. Okay, where are we at here? Oh, we've also got, this is another head scratcher. It's one thing about MLB, with the cats from the Guardians being embroiled in the whole pitch count gate. And MLB announcing they're going to, place caps on prop bets. And then I find out that they may be entering an agreement with one of these, what do they call them? They're prediction markets, like Kalshi or whatever the hell it's called. All these things that are causing people to freak out. I mentioned this the other day where states are kind of pushing back, going, this is really kind of betting in another way. It's the same thing. It's just disguised as it's a prediction market. I'm thinking MLB was just trying to herd off another scandal, but yet you're about to enter a partnership with one of these companies. Make that make sense for me somehow. Yeah. 2026. Only 2 months in. It just keeps getting more and more interesting. All right. So, we're going to close the gate on season 1. It's been an interesting journey trying to understand how to do video. Technically, we're still a long ways away from where I would like to be, I might add, but we're getting there. Thanks for being patient. Any suggestions as far as what we can do to improve? Always open ears as far as that is concerned. It's fun doing this. And I always encourage you to check out the other platforms, especially Fox Riding the Foxhole, which comes out on Fridays now. SJ gets down whenever she wants to put her stuff out, but yeah, I'm a co-host on that. The scene, whenever we can get back to that. All the cool things that we do here at FTINFX Media. We appreciate you tuning in. We always want you to tell a friend, subscribe, like the FTINFX Media's YouTube channel. Help us out with the algorithm. Need all the help we can get there. Anyways, it's been interesting. Get ready for season 2. That'll be coming shortly. Promise with more saltiness, more fun, more engaging, definitely more guests. So, thanks for coming along for the ride. We're about to have more fun. All right, folks. We'll see you soon. Peace.